It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Of course, also shout out to everybody out there on the RealAg Radio podcast, listening on demand as well. So hello to everybody out there in the podcast world. Well, hey, it's Monday. It's Agronomic Monday. And you say, what? I thought Shaun didn't host the Monday show anymore. Well, Lindsay's unfortunately feeling under the weather. So you're stuck with me trying to cover all things agronomy. And of course, we are into the middle of the growing season here. Kind of full-fledged in-crop spraying, for sure, for a lot of Canadian farms. Lots of considerations. We're going to hear from Carl deConinck Smith today on the program. He was a guest of Amber Bell's on a canola school episode, talking about how having onboard chemical storage really provides the opportunity for some flexibility and most importantly, a better ROI. So we're going to hear about that. We got Derek Bruce in a product spotlight with Bear Crop Science. And then, of course, we'll have Peter Pete Johnson here as well to talk about his trip to the UK last week. And there was more than just pints of Guinness. He was out in fields, as you would expect Pete would on holidays. I think he attended that cereals event, which would be really cool. I've seen a lot of social media on that event over the years. We'll get his takeaways, good and bad, from how agriculture is going in the UK. And they love to grow wheat over there, so those are wheat's people. Those are wheat's people. We got drought conditions in Western Canada. We got a bunch of soybean replants going on in central Canada. And we're going to talk about some in-crop spraying stuff as well. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Now, well, I don't know who's going to be hosting. Hopefully Lindsay's feeling better by tonight. But we got an episode of The Agronomist tonight. And tonight, I believe, is our 200th episode. Amazing. Pretty cool. I remember when we came up with this idea. What if we were to host like a live stream focused on agronomy? People could get CCA credits. It's not like a webinar. It's more of a conversation and really involve a live audience. And what if we could do that monthly? Or we could just do it weekly. And so in typical Real Agriculture style, we jumped in the deep end with both, our whole body, both feet and everything. And the show's been fantastic. It really has been great. And Lindsay took over hosting shortly after we first started and has done a tremendous job. Tonight's show is all about stress busters. So on this episode of The Agronomists, Lindsay's going to be joined by Deb Campbell of Agronomy Advantage and Pierre Mignier of Agro 100 to discuss distinguishing between biotic and abiotic stress on plants, what does and doesn't help plants manage different stressors, direct support for stressed plants versus indirect support as well. So great episode across many different crop types. So yeah, fantastic experts there. So looking forward to watching tonight's episode, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. And join the whole crew and the live audience that tunes in every single week. Of course, we also have the G7 underway in Kananaskis. It's pretty cool to see, as you watch the BBC News or CNN, Fox News, of course the Canadian news as well. You see all these people with this beautiful Kananaskis backdrop. You might not find a more picturesque place in the world to hold a meeting. Heard yesterday people trying to fly into Calgary. Not easy when you've got the 7 to 10 of the world's biggest leaders showing up and landing at the Calgary airport. You're going to see some delays, and that happened yesterday. And of course, President Trump and Prime Minister Carney meeting this morning. We'll have more on that meeting tomorrow. Let's get started with RealAg's Agronomic Monday right after this quick break. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Genesis Fertilizer is making real progress toward providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com. Okay, let's bring in the madman himself. It is Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. Hey, Pete, how are we doing?
Awesome, thanks, Shaun. I think that's the first time I've ever been called a madman. Maybe it fits. It's awesome. Yeah, it's great to be back in Ontario. By the way, I was away last week in the UK on the Great Lakes Yen tour. So we were there. We caught the cereals event in the UK, which is their big spring or summer farm show. It's actually at a time when the UK farmers are not very busy, because all of the crops, or all of the winter crops at least, which is most of their crops, the last fungicide application has been made and they're waiting for harvest. And harvest, you'd say, well, so it just headed out, they put on the T3 spray, so harvest will be in 6 weeks. No, over there it takes at least 2 months before they harvest. So until August, they're sort of on hold, so to speak. A heck of a busy time to be there. Shouldn't have been there, but learned a ton.
Yeah, I've always seen that cereals event. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, Shaun, there's so much stuff there. And it was on a chalk soil. So we got to visit Tim Lamyman. He is the current world record holder for winter wheat yield at, I believe it's 267.8 bushels per acre of wheat.
Whoa.
And yeah, baby, like that's huge. And he was very gracious. I think we spent 2.5 hours with him. And if we didn't have to rush off to our next stop, I think he would have actually spent longer with us. So most gracious, walked us through his production system. But what's really intriguing is that the cereals event was on the same soil type as Tim Lamyman's soil. It's called a chalk soil. And we did put in Wheat Pete's Word a picture. I got a picture at the cereals event. They had dug a really nice soil pit. But Shaun, it's the weirdest soil that I've ever seen. Here in Ontario, we will get shallow soils over limestone. So when I go east of Toronto and, Peterborough and east of there, you can get sometimes 4 or 6 inches of topsoil, and then you hit bedrock, and it's limestone or it's granite. There's no roots going into that. It's like all you have is 4 or 6 inches. And in most high yield areas, you go to the US Midwest where they get the big yields, and they've got 5-6 feet of topsoil before they even hit the B horizon. This chalk soil was 9 to 12 inches of plow layer. So that's basically the depth that they had tilled it to. And underneath that, there was a layer of maybe 10 to 12 inches that was a mix with a bunch of organic matter that had kind of percolated down into that. But a whole lot of these small looking rocks, and underneath that it was chalk. So chalk is they call it a chalk soil. That's what the parent material is. And it's just what it says, Shaun. If you picked up a piece of that chalk and you got a blackboard, you could have written on the blackboard. And you would say, how can that be the highest yielding wheat soil in the world, bar none? No irrigation, right? Like, just unbelievable. The chalk holds water, and the water moves up in the chalk from the aquifer below, and the plant can grow roots down into the chalk. And so these chalk soils are incredibly productive just because of that water supply capability. But when you look at it, I look at it and say, man, this is about the most unimpressive soil I've ever seen. And the topsoil's full of chunks of this chalk, like it's a brute, I think, on equipment, because the hydraulic pressure from underneath is always pushing pieces of the chalk up, and it gets in that plow layer. And yeah, it is just a phenomenally interesting soil.
How do the crops look there?
Not good. So they have had the driest spring. So March, April, May, the driest spring in, I believe it was 80 years. And they may be headed for the driest, growing season on record, because when we were there, it barely, like, I was there 10 days. We got one shower.
Whoa.
Yeah, like, it's just super dry. So even though this chalk soil has great moisture supplying capability, they still need rain to really make things work. And on Tim Lamyman's farm, you walked into the wheat fields and he said, there's no record yields here this year. And a lot of the crops, as you drove around, I've been to the UK before, and one of the things Tim Lamyman said is, if you want a record wheat crop, you have to get the whole field uniform. So uniformity and attention to detail are the focus. And most of the time in the UK, the wheat looks like a tabletop. This year, it was just not like that. I even saw wheat fields in head there that I could see between the rows. And I am just not used to that. In Tim's fields, you parted the wheat and you look down in and you could see tillers that had aborted. So they are not on track for a great crop, despite the fact that their spring is the sunniest. So March, April, May, the sunniest spring on record. 200 years of weather records. It's the sunniest spring they've ever had. And that should have been big wheat yields if only they had the moisture to go with it.
Yeah, sometimes in the UK when the sun comes out, you really start to appreciate it, because it can really cloud over there. But like you said, they can also get some quite pleasant weather that sometimes it's great for people in the city, but not conducive to growing the most highest yielding of wheat crop. Now, is wheat still a staple, like kind of the staple in the rotation there?
It's even more the staple in the rotation, Shaun, because they used to grow, I think, about 700,000 hectares of what they call it oilseed rape, which is our canola, winter canola. And because they've lost neonicotinoids, and because they have such pressure with cabbage stem flea beetle, so that's a different flea beetle than we get in Western Canada on canola, but still a flea beetle, and they can't control it. So they're down to something less than 300,000 acres of oilseed rape, so less than half of where they were. And lots of times, even the acreage they do grow is decimated by flea beetle and not very good. This particular year, the canola or the oilseed rape actually looked the best of any crop that I think we saw. And Tim Lamyman has a field of oilseed rape that, man, we stood in that, Shaun. The only way you could walk into it was to walk down the tram lines or the tramp lines, I guess, because canola is just so massive. But you could get into it. It was over my head, like pretty much as high as I could reach up. I couldn't even get my phone up above it. so that I could take a picture of that field. Like, it's just an amazing canola field. But to come back to your comment about is wheat the big crop? Well, you take oilseed rape out of the rotation, and barley is not worth very much, and so more and more it is wheat is the big crop. That and their environmental programs, man, they have more acres planted to wildflowers and grass mixes. And at the cereals event, I don't know, I bet you maybe at least 1 in 5 booths was just all about the environmental mixes and the environmental programs that they have.
Yeah. So is there something you brought back and you've been there before a number of times, but on this trip, was there something you brought back where you're like, okay, yeah, this is something we got to be aware of, and from a positive standpoint, because obviously some of the regulations and some of the losses is something we need to keep in mind on those neonicotinoids in terms of, hey, if we lose these tools, there is some big time, and not even unintended consequences. There's just consequences that we're well aware of, and we've been warning governments about them. What's something positive you brought back?
So the real big learning that I brought back is I've been wrong, Shaun. And hey, wait a minute.
Clip that.
Yeah. No. So my dad always said, he had a saying. He said, "You learn more when you're wrong than when you're right." And if you think about that for a minute, yeah, if you're right, you learn nothing. If you're wrong, you've learned something.
Yep.
So I've always been a huge, almost evangelistic about thou shalt not use reduced rates on fungicides, on herbicides, on insecticides. So they have some really good data, because with fungicides, they have, when an organism develops resistance, it's almost always target site resistance. So that means the specific thing that is the fungicide is targeting, they overcome that one single thing. With weed control, it's mostly metabolic resistance. So that's a totally different way of developing resistance. So with weed control, thou shalt not use reduced rates is still the mantra. But in the UK, because they have such trouble with septoria in wheat, they've learned a lot more. And what they've learned is that you should use the minimum effective dose of that fungicide, because when it's target site resistance, if you go over the minimum effective dose, so let's say you put on 3x, just as an example, if the disease overcomes that, man, like it's just got full resistance across the board.
You've got nothing left. You've got no artillery left. You've spent it all.
Exactly. Whereas if you use the minimum effective dose, so it controls it, but the disease can develop more tolerance than total resistance. And I have to dig more. I'm actually getting sent a bunch of videos on this because I want to understand it better. But you can then still get partial control by increasing the dose of the fungicide, so you don't lose that fungicide or that group of fungicides as quickly. And keeping those modes of action effective are really, really important. So that, I didn't know that, Shaun. I was wrong, because I've always said don't cut fungicide rates, and be careful, because in the UK, they do a lot of research to say the minimum effective dose for this fungicide on this disease is X. So they know that. We don't do that research. So at this point, still, I think we can't cut label rates, but I think there's lots of work that we can do moving forward.
Well, but then identification of that disease becomes absolutely critical, because what if the minimum lethal doses are different based on disease? And
yeah, absolutely. For them, they focus on septoria because that is the big yield robber there. Okay. Right. And by the way, the other yellow rust or stripe rust, we've had a huge problem here in Ontario with stripe rust. And YR15 is one of their sources of resistance. So you go to Western Canada, you go to the Western US, I think that area, you folks fight with stripe rust more than we do in Ontario. I think your genetic testing is better. In the UK, the genetic testing for stripe rust is unbelievable. But YR15 broke this year, and one of the varieties is Champion, and that is actually the variety that Tim Lammerman used to break the world record or set the world record. And its resistance to stripe rust was the YR15 gene, and it broke. And so they're back to the drawing board from that perspective in many of their varieties. So their whole variety lineup, because they really rely on this resistance. They still use fungicides, but it's the fungicide by itself is not the right answer. They want genetic resistance plus the fungicide. And so now their recommended list may change dramatically just because the disease organism has broken that resistance.
Hey, everybody. Time is running out to register for the 2025 Seeds Canada Annual Conference. Join the seed industry July 7th through the 9th at the Hilton, Quebec in Quebec City for insightful speakers, insights into the latest industry trends, regulatory changes, that's exciting, and technological advancements that are shaping the future of the seed sector. Register today at seeds-canada.ca/annual conference. We got more with myself, Shaun Haney, and Peter Wheatpeat Johnson of Real Agriculture right after this quick break.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
From nutrient management to the latest weather, market, and ag trends, The Dirt, an economics podcast, is your place for farm-smart topics to boost profitability. Join Mike Howell on Season 3 of The Dirt podcast, available now at nutrient-economics.com. Okay, Shaun Haney talking to Peter Wheatpeat Johnson here on this Agronomic Monday. Hey, Pete, during the commercial break, you mentioned there was one more. You got to slip in another negative that you brought home here to North America.
Right. And so I'm not sure it's a negative necessarily, Shaun, but it's sure not a positive. You asked me for a positive. But the one thing that really struck me, so the environmental programs there have been huge. And as when they were part of the EU, they were huge. They got a base payout from the government just to support the environmental things that they were doing. In 2027, unless the government finds a way to fund some new programs, all of that base payment, all of the environmental things are just going to disappear. And part of the reason is that, like many countries around the world, the UK is struggling to fund all the different needs that they need to fund, the healthcare, the roads, the military, and agriculture sort of doesn't maybe play at the same level as some of those other things. So, for example, one farm that we talked to had been getting 700,000 pounds per year in subsidy payments around the environmental programming.
Whoa.
And I believe that will drop to zero in 2027. And so we should not rely or become too reliant on government subsidy funding on these various programs as we move forward. There's actually growers there who sold all their equipment. 100% of their acres got planted into some environmentally friendly program, wildflowers or birds and bees mixes. In fact, they had a good name. It was the now I can't even think, but the bird and bee mix, so to speak. It was very interesting, all that focus. But if the government funding disappears, man, she can have major implications.
Yeah, but there is best intentions here, because I think in agriculture we prefer the carrot over the stick, and the carrot is the program, right? The stick is something like a carbon tax. So you take the carrot approach, but if you become reliant on that carrot, when that carrot goes away and the regulation stays, then we got a problem. And that's what's happening in the UK, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yep. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, major concern out in Western Canada. Looking at some of these drought maps. Ooh, Pete, we're not in a good position on a lot of acres. And what's interesting is just how, like northern Saskatchewan, for example, how that's typically a place where we're talking about when will it stop raining, and they seem to always have an abundance of moisture. But even they're saying dry, and of course we've had the wildfires in parts of the northern area of that province. Just a kind of a real concern about the Western Canadian prairie right now. We need some rain.
Yeah, absolutely, Shaun. And it just, for some growers, as I understand it, I talked to a couple Alberta growers who said that this was sort of their fifth year of being in some level of drought condition. Yeah. And you just go like 5 years. How can you survive 5 years? On that note, some really interesting things. Barry and Tyler sent me some nice pictures. So they have soybeans planted beside a wheat field. The tile are still running where they planted the soybeans. Of course, the soybeans are just nicely emerged. Meanwhile, in the wheat field, they have cracks that are up to 2 inches wide. And it just shows you the difference, because we have not had a lot of rain in much of Ontario. And when we do get rain, unfortunately, I believe last Thursday or a week ago, I guess, last Thursday, they actually got up to 3 inches of rain some areas. And it has just hammered soybean emergence unbelievably. So when we do get rain, it seems like it's feast or famine. But the wheat crop, in many cases, is really quite dry. It needs some more moisture, and because it's pumping water. At this point, the wheat crop is pumping about 1/4 of an inch of water per day. I was away 10 days. I got home. There was 11 millimeters in my rain gauge. So when you start talking about, transpiring somewhere in that range of 8 millimeters per day, and I had 11, I got 1 day's worth of rainfall in 10 days. It just is dry some places, and not like Western Canada, but it's a really interesting thought process to go through.
Well, I'm looking at the forecast here in the home studios of Lethbridge, Alberta, and it looks like Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, we could see, maybe if you add it all up, we might get to 45 mils. So hopefully there's more than that. Because we probably that's a good shot, but we could definitely use more a week later. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the crop isn't all that big yet, but it's getting to the stage where it really does need some moisture to take off. Not a lot of reserve. That's the problem everyone keeps on talking about. It's just we're addicted now to these timely rains because we just don't have the reserve in the soil to backstop us, right? And that becomes a game of roulette, weather roulette. Yeah. We're not farming chalk soils that bring it up from the reservoir below, right? Yeah, no, exactly. So hopefully Mother Nature, and you know what? We have a forecast that we did last week with Matt Makins of Makins Weather. So if you missed that, please go back into the archive there of the RealAg Radio podcast and listen to that interview from last Wednesday. Yeah, it was on Wednesday. So Matt was great. Some of the things he had to say about the weather forecast were not so great. It does sound like, though, Pete, Central and Eastern Canada are going to get a pretty nice summer here as it starts to warm up.
Right. And so my only comment to that would be, Shaun, don't bring it too early. Our wheat is in grain fill, and you know that I love wheat. It's my favorite crop. Surprise, surprise. But wheat doesn't like it anytime it's over 25 Celsius. So corn and soybeans, we need the heat, but could we please not have it till the 1st of July so that this awesome looking wheat crop that many of us have in the field can actually make a crop before it gets hammered by heat?
Yeah, great stuff. Hey, let's move on to spraying here. One of the things that we were chatting about during the break was, we talk about getting in there and controlling the weeds in crop early, right? We don't want to let those weeds get out of control, and we're worried about, I'm going to wait till the very last weed pops up and then we're going to kill all of them. Meanwhile, the weeds that are getting well established are robbing you of yield, right? There's lots of data on that. But we got to make sure we know the chemistry that we're going to be using, and critical here, the size of the weeds that label controls. Talk about some situations that you've seen that kind of concern you.
Yeah, and so, Shaun, the real concern is that we've got these big weeds out there, and what growers sometimes forget. So my example is wild carrot, and I've got a grower with just a blanket of wild carrot in a no-till soybean field, and the soybeans didn't get planted early because the conditions were never fit. We always had rainfall. It was a really cool May. I haven't seen the weather data yet, but I think actually I did see the weather data. May was like 10% less heat than normal. So we had 90% of normal heat in May, and things didn't dry out. And if you did plant, like I planted my soybeans on April 30th, they took a full month to emerge, and you just go, oh my gosh, what's going on here? The problem is with weeds like wild carrot, fleabane, chickweed. I've seen real problems with all of these weeds, and it's with fleabane. We do have glyphosate-resistant fleabane, but there are ways we control it. We can control it with a weed like chickweed. We have lots of herbicides that still kill it, but if you don't understand the life cycle of that weed, and you don't get out there early enough. So the chickweed situation, it got sprayed, but the chickweed was already in flower. Once a weed goes to flower, even a herbicide that says it's excellent on that weed often doesn't give you good control because the weed is just too mature. It takes a higher rate. Similarly with wild carrot situation, they sprayed with glyphosate and Ingenia. They're Roundup Ready Extend beans, and you'd say that is a solid program. Everything's going to die. Well, the rate of glyphosate is 0.67 liters per acre, and wild carrot, because it's a biennial, it was there last fall. It's starting to bolt this spring. There's some head, some of the flowers were there. It's a massive big plant. It just laughs at 0.67 of glyphosate, and Ingenia has no efficacy whatsoever. So you have to understand that, you can maybe get control of that weed. It's too big. We should have been there earlier. But if you're going to do it, you would need more glyphosate. It's rate-sensitive glyphosate, so you probably need at least 1.3, if not 1.5 liters of glyphosate. And you almost want to leave the Ingenia out, because sometimes group 4 herbicides like Ingenia or 2,4-D, in particular, we know 2,4-D, can antagonize that glyphosate. And if you're not getting full boost on that glyphosate, you're not going to get control on that weed. So herbicides and weed life cycles, they're complex, and we really need to understand them and know what the weed spectrum is out there, because it's just not as easy as it used to be.
Hey, yeah. That pretty much sums up farming, doesn't it? It's not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah. And you want to add to that, Shaun? Like, we have glyphosate-resistant annual ryegrass now showing up all over the place. Yeah. And it's going to add to the challenges. I'm surprised as I drive around the countryside. I am surprised how many fields where you can just see these tufts of grass sticking up. And I'm not going out in every field, but there's a high probability that those are glyphosate-resistant annual ryegrass. Ryegrass in general is the species that is most likely to become resistant to herbicide. Rigid ryegrass in Australia is the most herbicide-resistant species I think that we're aware of. And if I think last count, it was rigid ryegrass in Australia was resistant to 21 different modes of action.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why they built the seed destructor, because no herbicide will kill it, and somehow we have to reduce that seed set.
Well, people voted that way for the weeds, but your high school graduating class, you were voted most likely to succeed in life, right?
Yeah, in your dreams, man.
Oh, you weren't. Oh, okay, that must have been a different Peter Johnson. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think Google can lead you astray.
I think I was voted the most what's incorrigible. I was voted the most incorrigible student in the school. Well,
you're gonna have to give us a word definition. What does that even mean, Pete? You went to a very, very highbrow school. Apparently, that those are big words for awards.
Yeah. Well, I was branded as incorrigible, which basically means I was a brat, right? I'm always pulling pranks and not in a mean way. All right, Shaun, I'm not a mean person. But
allegedly.
Well, even on the Yen tour, I think the people on the bus started to roll their eyes at all the different comments and I don't know, just trying to have a bit of fun while we're driving along.
The Brits didn't appreciate some of your humor. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, I think the Brits got along with it okay, because several of the speakers started firing back at me with similar stuff. So
yeah, I like it. Hey, Pete, I'm so glad you had a great time. That is awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it on this week's Wheat Pete's Word, which is a podcast that Pete hosts. He answers your agronomic questions. New episode drops every Wednesday. You can make sure that you tune in and hear all about it. Wheat Pete's Word. Okay, Pete, have yourself a great week.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for the opportunity, Shaun.
Hey, awesome stuff. Hey, Co-op Ag Zone Bin Logic is the ultimate tool for ensuring the success of your grain operations. Simple, scalable, solar-powered, and cost-effective. Bin Logic lets you monitor your bins from anywhere. You could have been like Pete, been in the UK on a bus touring wheat fields and still monitoring your bins back home. Contact your Co-op equipment team member to learn more. We've got more RealAg Radio coming up right after this. I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
To RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am Lindsay Smith, and joining me now for today's Product Spotlight, it's Derek Bruce. He's Digital Solutions Lead with Bayer Crop Science and FieldView. Well, the growing season is underway, which is very exciting. But it means that for canola growers, you already need to be thinking forward about fungicide decisions. Derek, tell us about your experiences with making the call on fungicides.
I farm as well, and over the years, we've sprayed some. We've left some. Sometimes we wish we would have sprayed more. Sometimes we wish we'd sprayed less. It's really been a hit and miss thing. It really has. But last year, we sprayed Proline Gold, and we realized anywhere from a 4 to about 11 bushel an acre increase using the canola fungicide digital pilot through Climate FieldView and measuring these results using field region reports in the good areas. So in the good areas where we sprayed and where we didn't spray in the poor areas, that was the result. Sometimes the spread was closer to 4 bushel an acre, and that's true. And I know why that's the case is because I was a little late getting out there. You get daily reports. The canola was at 50% bloom. It was as bright yellow as can be, and I should have been out there earlier. Yeah, that's kind of what happened last year, and I'm planning on doing more of it this year.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, so you mentioned using the Canola Fungicide Digital Pilot Program.
Yes.
So what is this program and how can it help manage risk?
So the Canola Fungicide Digital Pilot is one of the features that is offered within FieldView. And FieldView is a digital platform. What this does is it offers predictive disease management. And what's unique about it is it's based on weather information that FieldView also collects, but it also is based on visual imagery of the customer's fields. And that gives you insight as relates to where the better parts of the canola field are and help you manage that sclerotinia risk. Because at the end of the day, it answers the big question that we always have at this time of year. We've sowed the crop, we've sprayed the crop's coming, and the question is, should I spray for a fungicide? Number one. Number two is, when should I spray? And the third question is, where should I spray? And with this Canola Fungicide Digital Pilot allows the grower to make their own prescriptions, as they know their land better than anybody else. They just need the tool to do it, and allowing them to make the decisions on a field-by-field basis versus a whole farm spray operation. It allows you to pick the good areas of a field and maybe leave the areas that don't have that same potential behind by automatically shutting that sprayer section off and skipping over those areas. So the Canola Fungicide Digital Pilot is $500. And you get, when you enroll, you get up to 1,000 acres that the Climate FieldView program will monitor for you. In addition to that, Bayer Crop Science gives you $1 an acre off your ProLine Gold. So if you spray 500 acres of ProLine Gold, you get $1 an acre back. The program is free. That is an awesome deal. And the grower has now effortlessly sprayed the best areas of their crop. They've used the best canola fungicide to do it, and they get the best yield possible. And that is something else. That was a good decision in hindsight that we did last year that we're signed up again for this year.
So one of the things you said earlier on was exactly sort of that in that decision-making process, you were maybe a little late getting to a certain part of the field. What are some of the key takeaways, some of the learnings from that experience that you'll apply to this year?
Yeah, so plan to spray early. I've worked with canola for 30 years professionally, and we've always talked about the nature of canola. We sow this canola, we worry about it because it's not growing and it seems to be slow. The truth is that's just the natural growth habit of it. And the same thing happens when it starts to flower. And regardless of whether you've had a good even emergence or not, when it starts to flower, it looks a little ragged. And you're trying to decide if you should spray this crop or not because it doesn't look good. But 30% bloom is when there's 20 open flowers on the main stem. And, but by the time it gets to full bloom, when the crop is the yellowest, is when you start to feel good about that crop and investing money in it. But the problem is that infection from sclerotinia happens too early. And you might be a little late getting out there. And we have more losses from an early infection of sclerotinia than we do a late one. So what my advice would be is to plan to go early. Plan to go at 30% bloom. So at 30% bloom, you're about 7 to 10 days into the flowering period. When you spray a product like ProLine Gold with 2 modes of action, a group 3 and a group 7, you get anywhere from 10 to 14 days of protection. So when you add that up, you've looked after the entire flowering cycle of your canola crop. So you've protected it. So there's no advantage to waiting. Plan to go early at 30% bloom. That would be the key message that I learned, because sometimes the decision to spray is nothing to do with the conditions before you decide to do it or not, but everything to do with the conditions after you have done it or not. And sometimes that's too late. Mm-hmm. So plan to go early.
Very good advice. Completely agree that sometimes it looks a little ragged early on. And then when it ends up in full flower, it is just stunning and impressive. And you don't want to, shoot yourself in the foot and miss that window, that key window to protect those petals. All right. For those who are interested, where can they go for more information? Who can they call?
Perfect. So what you could do is you could go to our website, which is www.climatefieldview.ca. And then I want you to go under pricing and then go under canola digital pilots. And that's where you will sign up. That's where you will see the canola fungicide digital pilot. Or if you want to make a phone call, we have a toll-free 9, which is 1-888-283-6847. And they will be able to help you, direct you, give you to your right digital solutions lead to get you started. But act now. It's going to be here before too long. We'll have some flowering canola here by the end of June.
Derek, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be back with more Real Ag Radio right after this. I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Register for the Soils for Our Future Conference, a gathering of global to local perspectives. Join us July 20th through the 25th at the RBC Convention Center in Winnipeg. Learn about global perspectives, today's research to sustain our future. Register today at soilsforourfuture.ca. Well, in a recent Canola School episode, of course, that is sponsored by BASF Canada and Vigor Hybrid Canola. You can find more episodes by going to canolaschool.com. Amber Bell of Real Agriculture had a chat with Western Canadian farmer Carl deConinck Smith, talking about some of the spray topics and really digging in here specifically on looking at flexible spraying and better ROI with onboard chemical storage. This is interesting stuff from Carl deConinck Smith out of Saskatchewan. Let's listen to the conversation.
We're going to be talking about onboard storage for chemical handling when out spraying. So welcome, Carl. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit first about your farm. What do you do here? What is your farm name?
Yeah, so it's deConinck Smith Ag Ventures. We farm in West Central Saskatchewan near Darcy. We farm 13,000 acres, and it's a mixture of cereals, canola, and pulses.
You have direct injection on this sprayer here. So tell me a little bit about this technology and what it does.
Yeah, so what this technology does is it allows me to carry a significant amount of product on board so that I can basically reduce having a nurse trailer out when I'm spraying. Just essentially need water. Currently on board here I can carry up to 800 liters of Roundup that I can do one of two things. I can either just directly inject it straight into the line so it doesn't have to be mixed in the tank. I can also pump it directly into the tank as well. So it's very, very flexible.
Right, and how does it work?
So how it works is there's a little direct injection pump at the back, and it's all set from within the cab, so I can vary my rates of Roundup on the go. And essentially it just pumps it directly out of those tanks into a mixing chamber at the back.
Right, and you were saying you can go for the majority of a day with this,
yeah,
right?
800 liters, so if you're at a liter an acre of Roundup, so I can do 800 acres essentially with what's on board, and so it just depends exactly on your rate that you're using.
And how long have you been using it for?
It's about 10 to 12 years we've been using the direct injection. I think this is the only sprayer that I know of in the world that has direct injection in combination with spot spray technology, but I know there's definitely some direct injection systems that have been out there. They're just not real widely used.
Why do you think that is?
I think the biggest reason that it hasn't been used is a bit of a trust factor. So it's really good if you're the operator, you know exactly what's going out the back. You don't have to, actually punch a certain amount of chemical jugs or put it in the tank. You just have to trust that, either technology or, that you've actually hit the button to go on. And you don't even have to use it as direct injection. It's super efficient to be able just to carry that chemical with you, to not have to have an extra person as labor carrying around that chemical during the day. It can be a one-person operation.
Right. And what does the return on investment look like on something like that?
It just, more or less, it just saves having that extra person having to run chemical is really what it saves. It's not that it saves chemical. It's just that it just makes it a lot easier during the day. And it's also safer, too. It's just the Roundup gets pumped in those tanks, so you're not handling the chemical all day long. So you're getting that bulk product away from your fills. So your fills are far, far faster because you can fill a small amount of other product while the Roundup's it's already loaded. So you're not taking that costly time to fill.
So what are some of the other benefits that you've seen by using a direct injection system?
Yeah, the other real big benefit is switching from crop to crop. For example, if you're doing some burn off and then want to go do some quick, maybe an in-crop cereal, because the Roundup is just being injected, you don't have to do a tank rinse. As long as you just have a broadleaf chemical that's added to your Roundup that's in the tank, you just turn the direct injection off, spray your booms out, and you can go right directly to spraying cereals. To
spraying something different?
Yeah.
Do you find that you use that a fair bit?
We do, yeah, when we're really switching, when we get into that latter part of seeding. So we're still maybe doing some burn off, we're maybe starting some chem fallow, but we're starting to integrate into the early spring seeded cereals. And also through the year too. So we will, when we get into the real in-crop, we'll start to transfer some of these tanks over to our broadleaf chemical for cereals. So then we can start running our broadleaf chemical through those direct injection and only put some wild oat chemical in the tank. Now we can go from spraying our cereals to pulses or canola is a lot easier, just depending on the mix and match of how you want to make it the most efficient.
Right, and that really drills down too to not having to handle the chemical nearly as often as you would otherwise.
For sure. It just it's just a lot less handling of it, quicker fills, and it definitely can reduce some of those really hard rinse cycles that can really help the efficiency.
Encourage you to check out the video of that interview. You can find it at RealAgriculture.com or canolaschool.com. And all the Canola School episodes are also posted, of course, on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. We'd love your feedback, your comments, your thoughts, your questions, your rants. You can do that by sending me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, call the Real Ag feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Hopefully Lindsay Smith is feeling better. And it was great, though, to check in with you here on this Agronomic Monday, and hope you have yourselves a great day. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.